Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, the give a thing and the take a thing away.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from. Need one now? Grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. Stock up today and stay energized. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you. Glad you made it back to the 806 in one piece, though one part of the anatomy may be in pieces. Some heartbreak across West Texas or wherever Red Raiders are obviously waking up after that one, as Texas Tech is close but without a cigar. The thrill of victory, the agony of defeat, March giving and March taking away. Man, we've had it all in just the span of a few days, and that's what this tournament can obviously bring. So we'll dive into some of what went down between Texas Tech and Florida as the Red Raiders season comes to an end. Gators move on. And, of course, also want to look back at a few bigger picture questions as it relates to the season as a whole. As you and I were talking about just before we came on the air a moment ago, the body's still not quite cold, so I'm not going to say, where are we at? What was the season grade? Anything like that. But I got a couple of questions for you, Chris. But as you go back to San Francisco and go back to that one, kind of wondering if we're describing it somewhat in a way similar to what we saw against Arkansas, at least in the sense that I haven't seen one or many like that when you advance past the Hogs, and I hadn't seen one or many like that when you come up short against the Gators. And unfortunately, the swing in momentum goes the other way this time around for Texas Tech.
Yeah, San Francisco kind of you ran the gamut of emotions there, didn't you?
Yes, you did.
And I guess in some weird way, maybe it was easier for me to process or mentally deal with the loss and being so close to playing in the Final Four in your home state because of the minor miracle you pulled off on Thursday night. And you were on the right end of it and the wrong end of it in two different nights in a span of 3 days. And that's the beauty of this tournament. It just gives you nothing will ever take away from. I've seen the Titanic music treatment on the Arkansas game. I've seen, just like there's just so much that, because it just didn't make a lot of sense. You made shots, you made plays. Arkansas struggled, and then you it's like you were playing good cop that night, and then you played the bad cop the other night. I said during the broadcast, you're winding down with Florida, and I'm like, you have a big lead, you're working these dudes, and we know how this goes or can go, and I didn't. But it's just kind of like that. You're just watching it happen a little by little. And you just want to run out there and throw something on the court. I don't know, just do something to just stop it and stop the momentum or something. But it's not trying to be corny here, but like when people emotionally invest into this deal, whether you are a fan or a player or a coach or whatever, and you feel that excitement on Thursday night, you feel that shock, you feel that this is the best feeling ever. When it's the opposite, it's supposed to hurt. It's supposed to sting. It's supposed to linger. Like when you get that far and you get that close, it's supposed to hurt. The easy thing for people to say is, if we'd have just gotten blown out, it would have been so much easier. Well, I don't know if I agree with that.
No.
Because you would have that's a whole other set of problems and criticisms that would have been offered up. But
that's an injection of copium, is all that is.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
But you did belong. You did play with one of the best teams in the country, and at some point they couldn't stop you. And I hate this little whiny dude that coaches them. He's the one that's been under Title IX investigations, Coach Coed, Coach Title IX, whatever you want to call him. He whined about everything. He's dropping F-bombs to the officials. Grant never cusses, and he's the one being told, hey, I'm done. We're not talking anymore. And this dude's like sitting on his little stool. He pisses me off. Like, I mean, this guy, because anyway, but he did make, let's call it what it is. I think they made a conscious decision at the end of the game. They couldn't stop the post ISOs, and so they basically said, "Put these guys on the line," and it worked. And that's the part that we will all wonder what if, and I mean, even if you just make one of those front end of 1-and-1s,
Yep.
just to stop the train coming down the tracks, just to alter it just a bit, and could you have gotten your legs under you at that point? Would it have altered the way that it was played out with the score being what? I mean, just anything. But they put in two different scenarios, and I think it was on purpose. I think they were like, we can't stop it, just foul them, and it worked. And I hate that it worked. And he can go whine and cry, I guess, in San Antonio, but I will not be rooting for Florida. And I, as good as Walter Clayton is, I'm like, this dude came from Iona. He's turned himself into a phenomenal player. He's one of the best players in the country. He's on the level of top end and All-American type stuff, this and that. Arguably one of the best guards in the country. The flopping antics are cheap and petty, and for the referees to fall for it multiple occasions is sickening to me at this stage. But again, he was able to take advantage of the opportunities that he was given. The Red Raiders were given same opportunities, were not able to take advantage. And with that, and you can't deny, I mean, Clayton made just some unbelievable shots down the stretch. And
Stupid.
I mean, yeah. And so you got beat. You got beat.
Yeah.
I hate that the Hack-a-Shack, plan was able to be executed, and it worked. And that's what, because I mean, and you get 3-point looks. I mean, I've heard, they rushed it. They did this, they did that. They got clean looks. They got looks that they've been able to, if just one of those goes down, and one of them has most of the season, you had multiple cracks at it from different guys, and you get the looks that you wanted. I don't care how much time is left, the time on the shot clock. You got to take a shot when it's available, and you just could knock one of them down. And
and with those guys that were pulling the trigger, green light anytime. I mean, there ain't. Yeah, exactly. That's all hindsight stuff. And by the way, I'll get cheap and petty with Walter Clayton or anybody else that can fool these officials any time of day, all day. That's the way it goes, and it's always been their problem. It's not a player problem. Yeah. It's not soccer like coming into basketball problem. It's an officiating problem, and I love the way they go about trying to solve it, which is just kind of indicative of what they are as a thinking body whenever it comes to rules and governing. What do? They don't ask the officials, hey, could you maybe a little more judicious in calling these things? People are getting really upset about this. They're saying it's really impacting the game. No, instead, we're just going to blanket say, we're not calling any of this, and maybe we'll kick you out of the game if we think you're flopping. Why don't you just call it? And, the punishment of flopping is not getting the call typically, but that's probably too cumbersome for the officials. So I don't want to put too much on their plate. Consistent basketball officiating has been proven over the years to be more difficult than space flight, because we went to the moon once, but we've never seen the former. And Chris, I would just say, as far as the opportunities down the stretch, Texas Tech was there with great looks. I would even say better looks than what Florida had in some of those final moments. The shots didn't fall. I love the guys pulling the trigger. I love when they pulled the trigger, you drew up something that worked to get you enough space to do it. They fell a couple nights before. They didn't fall on Saturday. And then you got two awful looks, two of the worst looks I saw in the tournament, going through the rim for the other guys. So I just don't know what you do really, but credit what they were able to do in those clutch moments. And Texas Tech had just done it, but they just weren't able to repeat it, unfortunately, on Saturday. And I would say, unfortunately as well, one of the earliest that I remember kind of storylines around this team early on in the season, things that I was texting with the Matador mob about. First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness rolling on, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on anything and everything from buzzer beaters, comebacks, and more, to even who's cutting down the nets. And of course, it doesn't get any easier or faster than FanDuel, the FanDuel app. Simple to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com today and get in on the action. One of the earliest that I remember kind of storylines around this team early on in the season, things that I was texting with the Matador mob about, was like, boy, we sure do play with fire with these free throws. I mean, I remember going back to the first month of the season, like, sheesh. All right, well, I hope we got some wide margins as you're winding down games, because we've played with fire in that category a lot. And it's just wild how basketball karma, sports karma, just circles all the way back around. And in the biggest game of the year, it was an Achilles heel. And it wasn't just, in those final moments, strategy-wise, what you were describing, it obviously was. But even early on, Toppin going over, like, whew, here we go. All right, here's some wasted points. And you know what? I got to guess, maybe this is a 1 or 2 possession game in the final few seconds. So it's just an unsettling feeling. The 10-point margin, you hate to see slip away, but I think a lot of us were sitting there looking at that with the time left on the clock and thinking, okay, we're going to need more points. This feels great right now. I was really enjoying it. It felt great. It was like a warm bath. But you kind of knew that it was going to get a little tighter down the stretch. And unfortunately, you just weren't able to keep going to that well when Florida actually turned out to be able to.
Yeah, and the other thing, and we'll move on, and in the later in this show in the coming days about what's to come and all that. But I will, before we move on from this particular game, I will say, maybe it's just good for me mentally, and I know darn well it was good for him, but I was really happy and somewhat stunned. But I really am thrilled that Chance McMillian got to go out that way.
Yeah. Because
it wasn't a, well, I wonder what if Chance would have played, because to me, no, he didn't start, but he played 26 minutes. And it looked like a pretty darn normal game to me.
Yes, it did.
From him.
Didn't seem ceremonial.
Shockingly.
Defensively and offensively.
Yeah. He's running. I mean, there's on one time, I mean, he's not getting knocked down. He's getting, there's a lot of contact. And on one time did I see him kind of wince. And then another time where he was like, because Will Richard was chasing him all over the dang court. I mean, he's going off staggers and just, running from corner to corner and trying to get open looks and trying to keep it moving. And I at one point he was like, "Hey man, I need a break." And I'm like, yeah, I mean, so, but I don't know if you get a 10-point lead or if this game is as close or however you want to phrase it. I don't know if you're able to put as good of an effort together totally if Chance McMillian's not part of it and wasn't able to play as well as he did. But for that, I just am glad that at least you're not sitting there wondering, okay, what if? Because he played and it looked like a pretty darn near normal game for him to me.
He got to go out on the shield, right? Like, I mean, yep. Figuratively.
Yep. I agree.
I was glad for that. And I thought also when you see him available, we were texting about that prior to the game with the mob, like, all right, jersey's on. This appears to be warm-ups. We're getting closer, and they're still not saying he's out. And then he enters the game, and I'm like, all right, is this 30% Chance McMillian? Is this, hey, let's maybe create some space for him, see if he can pull the trigger on a couple of shots? But defensively, not so much. But like I already made reference to, I thought some of the stuff he was doing on the defensive end was really some of the stuff that stood out to me and made me think, I think he's feeling pretty good. I don't know what he feels like, the following morning, but I thought he was feeling pretty good. I'm just glad for the opportunity to compete because obviously he deserved that, and he'll be an all-time favorite among Red Raiders, I'm sure.
And it's crazy how much all the you know what you have, but when it's gone, you're like, boy, I don't know if we realized how good it was when he's in the mix and a part of the rotation and the team and everything. Because there's some limitations without somebody like him. Because I just would offer this up again, and we'll hold on to this one for a long time too. But Houston hasn't lost since you beat them, and you didn't have the Big 12 Player of the Year. That's just how good your guards are. That's how good this collection of guards are, together and playing off of each other with their decisions and shot making. And you looked right at the best defense in the country in their building, and you outlasted them. I mean, toe to toe. And that just that says a lot about, because I think in some ways you can make the argument that JT's easier to replace than Chance is, depending on the matchup.
That's a good question, man. And you get my wheels turning, because he became such a special player. His versatility and just the weapon he can be inside and outside offensively, because he loved to attack the rim also. The dude could get up. He always competed on the glass. He was tough. He wasn't just some finesse three-point guy. And like you've pointed out over and over defensively, he really became a stopper. So that's an interesting question. How about I'd like to lose neither?
I know, no doubt. And I'm not trying to play one against the other. I'm just saying it just speaks to when he's back into there. Because I mean, like when you're watching that game play down the stretch, and you've got your like normal starting five in there, or even Christian in there instead of Kerwin, there's a lot of juice on the floor. It's like I feel comfortable all over. It gives me the warm fuzzy. I mean, it's just how different it looks, and it had been a minute since you, because every game that you had without him was a one and done scenario. Every one of them, Arizona in the Big 12 tournament, and then you played those 3 games in the NCAA tournament. So every one of them was a one and done scenario, to where you're playing good teams. There's obviously everything on the line. I mean, not necessarily in Kansas City, but you get what I'm saying. And it's just fun to have him back and be able to go out that way, as frustrating as it was in a loss. But I just, because I mean, we'll always wonder if Tariq Owens doesn't hurt his ankle against Michigan State, if you end up winning the national championship. I'll always wonder. And I no one can convince me that you don't take down Virginia that night with a normal and healthy Tariq Owens, but that was not in the cards, obviously.
Be wondering if Zach Smith doesn't get hurt if you're in the Final Four a year earlier and not getting stopped at the Elite Eight. So and I know every team's got some questions like that probably when you think about this time of year. It's a long trip and everybody's a little banged up, but I'm glad Chance could be back in the fold. And man, talk about time well spent as a Red Raider. Comes over from Grand Canyon. All due respect to GCU, I was kind of wondering if this is one of those places where the end of the name has a .edu on it, but this is a real place, and they produced a guy like Chance McMillian, and then really just blossomed as a Red Raider. So absolutely terrific find, and glad that he spent time in Lubbock. And got a shout out as well, our guy Elijah Hawkins, as we're talking about some guys obviously who the conversation will come to an end for as far as the Red Raider combo is concerned. And I know from a scoring standpoint, he's probably regretting not having the day that we've seen him have on some other occasions. Still positively impacted the offensive end of the floor, no doubt, for Texas Tech. And we know what he was defensively. But, Chris, I don't know if you've been the leader of the bandwagon, but you've been securely on it for Elijah Hawkins for quite some time now, man. And obviously a huge impact for him made on this season for Texas Tech.
Yeah, he's such a good teammate, and it got harder for him in San Francisco. Both of these games, I think his the size limitations and everything like that, but he just keeps coming at you. And he hit a 3 in each game that was fairly important at the time, and his 7 assists to 1 turnover against Florida was more like what we had seen all year. But he's just. And as you look forward, and we'll get into this in the rest of this week and as we go, but it's worth mentioning that if you're a point guard, and maybe Christian Anderson takes the reins there, but you'll need another guard that can facilitate and handle it and all those things. I think that playing for Grant is not easy, and Grant will be the first one to tell you, but the point guards under Coach McCasland are real dudes. I mean, you look at Joe and Pop, you look at what Christian Anderson, and then obviously Elijah, and then you look at the kid that played for him, Tyler Perry, I think is his name, that went to North Texas, ended up going to Kansas State. But he asks a lot of them, but they all end up being much better for being under this head coach. And again, Grant will tell you that it's not easy to be a point guard under me. I'm going to lean on you more than most. And there's certain ways I want things done. And it took a bit with Elijah back in November and December to where I think that it wasn't the best situation. But again, you go back to Salt Lake City and it all kind of came together, and he's never looked back. He will be difficult to replace because that's the one piece that you will have to replace. But I just you squeezed about everything out of what he could give you, and that's the best compliment you can give to your coach. And Elijah is just a hell of a competitor, man, and he's been the smallest guy his whole life, and it's not new to him, but he figures out a way to make it work and play at a very high level. And yeah, you're right. You wish he could have scored a bit more, but I mean, you're asking him to do so much. I mean, just look what he did from a rebounding standpoint. I mean, he had 4 rebounds against these dudes, and he's just chasing guys around, trying to pester them, and then getting called for bogus fouls when he doesn't even touch anybody. But anyway, I will be a big fan of his for a long time.
Yeah, and another guy that's a big hit for Grant McCasland and his staff as far as dudes they've found and brought to Lubbock to be Red Raiders, and turns out to be a great success and a positive impact. So another one, then he's got some good company, but another one to join those ranks. Chris, I'm kind of curious as you look at the context of this, Elite Eight setting. As you look at the context of this, Elite Eight setting and thinking about, what it really feels like to be on the cusp there is something really special. You sort of feel like, at least describing it for myself as a fan, after you win a Sweet 16 game, man, you're flying high, and we're talking like, hey, house money. I feel like you got nothing to lose at this point. Certain teams in that context feel that way, but I sort of felt that way for Texas Tech. And I'm telling, my wife at one point, make sure the baby's awake because we're on the precipice of a Final Four or the precipice of a breakdown. I don't know which, but I think that's part of what, and shout out to my buddy Ryan Hyde, I saw him tweeting about this, makes this round like so just emotionally engaging because you're really there on the cusp of as special gets. And there is a lot of specialness about the Elite Eight. I don't want to diminish that, but when you see it, you're on the edge of it, you can sniff it, and then you wind up short. I think that in part what makes this round kind of different from some others. Do you kind of feel it or see it the same way?
Some will tell you that it's the hardest one to win in the tournament just because you're now deep into the tournament, and typically you've got a hell of an opponent across from you.
Yeah.
And it's the hardest box to check because there's so many programs out there that have a lot of history and have been to a lot of Sweet 16s, have been to some Elite Eights, but they just can't ever win that game to get to the next round. And it's because in some ways you feel like you've accomplished so much if you get to the third weekend. And it's the Holy Grail. I mean, right? It's and I'm not saying that you've accomplished everything and you get there and it's like, okay, our work is done. No, there's more work to do, and you get there and you want to go. But that's it's one of the hardest ones games in sports, and it's also on the quick turnaround. So you're on a quick prep. You're trying to cram everything in. You're probably mentally exhausted by this point. You've been on the road for. I mean, Callan, I hadn't seen my wife and child, and I've been in, Phoenix, and then it was Kansas City for 5 days, Wichita for 5 days, San Francisco for 5 days. And it's like, you're just like your head's spinning and it just sucks it out of you. And, and I'm not doing anything difficult. It's just, but like the constant travel and turning the page and all that. But that's why that game, because when you win that one, all the pain goes away. Because this is the first time in this tournament you actually climb up on a ladder and you cut down a net. I watched the Red Raiders do this in Anaheim, California, when you beat Gonzaga, and it was just it's very surreal. And anyway, and you were really close to being able to do that. And I guess it just is always going to sting that much more because of what heaven would have maybe looked like in San Antonio next week.
Yeah.
Or this week. That's the part that it probably doesn't quite sting as much if you're telling me the Final Four is in Atlanta or Minneapolis again or whatever. But when you had that carrot being dangled, you're like, you've got to be kidding me.
True.
You know, like, I mean, because I've been fortunate enough to be at 2 Final Fours in San Antonio. That city was built for that event. It is tailor made for hosting a Final Four. It is awesome, and you were ready to take it over, and almost, and a couple of front end of 1-on-1s and some missed opportunities from behind the arc, man, and what wasn't meant to be. But what a phenomenal season! Exceeded so many of anybody's expectations, and you got yourself a ball coach. And if you think this stops or like, it's going to require some patience here and figure out what this is going to look like next year. And we'll get into that as we go. But you've got a hell of a guy in charge. And he is brilliant at people and roles and being a leader and, keeping drama out of a lot of this to where it's focused on all the right things. And in Grant McCasland, I trust
Yes.
because this is now you've just finished up one of the best seasons in your program's history. I mean, this stands.
No doubt.
This one stands with what the 17-18 team and the 18-19 team. I mean, this team belongs in that conversation now, absolutely. And I guess someday maybe we can have conversations about which one is the best three of the three teams. I don't know. That's not what I'm trying to do, but I'm saying. You'll hang an Elite Eight banner up there, and you should. And I wish I wasn't ready for it to end. And I know nobody was ready for it to end. But
in Grant we trust. Put that on my Red Raider Bucks if I got any.
Yeah,
I mean, he charming, considerate, psychotically competitive. I don't know how you combine these things, but. Turns into a hell of a basketball coach.
Yes, it does.
I'm glad he's wearing a Texas Tech pullover and will continue to do so. Really quickly before we get out of here, you maybe just gave me your answer, but I did kind of want to look back at 24-25 versus some expectations. And I kind of feel like in the most complimentary way I could mean it, I don't know if I'd even sit here and say Tech overachieved. I think they fulfilled or lived up to really high expectations. This was a really good roster with some really talented players. You have a conference player of the year here. I think this is kind of where they should have been as far as that range, whether they would make it to a Final Four or get into an Elite Eight and be stopped there, whatever. I guess we can split those hairs, but I think they lived up to what were some high expectations in some senses. It took a little while as far as the work in progress, but eventually we saw that progress and you wind up as one of the best teams in the country.
I think I think there's two different answers here, and I'm not trying to ride the fence, but I would say based on what I would have thought they were and what we thought everything else was before the year, I think they were a massive overachiever. I thought NCAA tournament team, relevant, okay, in the conference race, but expectations change. And as you get into this deal, I think there's a different expectation you have for this group when you start realizing what you're dealing with here. And I think at that point, yes, they absolutely realized expectations. So I hope I'm making sense there. But
no, yeah, it does. Yeah,
I think they absolutely validated their legitimacy as a program and the numbers and the metrics because, I talk to you about Ken Palm all the time. I think if at least before the Elite Eight started, I think there was like 8 of the top 9 teams left were like in the top 8 of the Ken Palm, like 8 of the top 9, and I think Texas Tech was the lowest ranked one. But that's how important that metric is when it just factors in efficiency and all the things, turnover margin and free throw rate and offensive efficiency, defensive, all the stuff, all the goofy numbers that get put on paper. Grant really looks at that, and it proved to be wildly accurate. And I think that there was no fluke here. I think you probably earned a lot of street cred in some ways because of how you maneuvered your way through this tournament. There wasn't a one and done scenario. There wasn't I didn't really believe in them. No, you were toe to toe and throwing uppercuts with one of the top teams in the country. And until that run started, you were playing great defense. And that's the thing, because you just look at these individual pieces. There's not a lot of individual great defenders here. You don't have a lockdown guy. You don't have but they got better and better and better. And you were D'ing up one of the best offenses that there is, really historically, when you look at some of the Ken Palm stuff. And then they just, like, there's no defense for just throwing in crazy shots or being able to go to the free throw line 25 times. But yeah, that's the part that I think is interesting, because you remember the UCF game? You couldn't stop them. I mean, it didn't matter how many timeouts, how much yelling he did. You couldn't keep the ball out of the paint. There was just no answer. And you look up, and how much better did they get against about as good as this season could offer up?
Sure.
And I think that speaks to Grant and Breyer and Linder and just all of it, with the development and the maturity that they showed as they just continue to get better and better and better. And so we'll all have to remember that as we go, because too many times people want to write the end of the book or end of the story in November and December, and like you overreact or whatever. But it's just that these seasons are long. This thing's been going for 5 months, man.
Yep.
I go back to you scrimmaging Drake and St. Mary's. And why did you pick those two teams? Of all the teams he could have scrimmaged, you did one in Lubbock and one in Phoenix, because they are extremely good on offense. Crazy ball movement. Guys are moving all over everywhere. And he wanted to put his guys in a situation where, like, I want to stress them defensively. He knew what he was dealing with, and it ultimately turned out to be a pretty damn good defensive team. But that's the part that I guess he may one day go, that's what I was most proud of, is how far this group came defensively.
That's what wins. And I'm glad that we had a team that made more threes or whatever than any other team in the history of the program, and all that stuff is fun and nice. And the offense was great, but the culture is rooted in defense. And that's a great thing, because that will continue to have you in competitive positions. So successful season, I think, any way you slice it. Painful way to end it, but won't lessen the enjoyment of it, I don't think, by any stretch. So we got a lot to still process with you this week. Of course, we'll begin to look ahead, because we're already talking roster management. Portal season now upon us, I suppose. And we'll talk about maybe as we get into it, some of those who are in Texas Tech uniforms already and could remain or could not. So we got a whole lot coming up this week. So make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts, so you never miss an episode. Congrats to Tech on a great year. Congrats to the Gators on a win. Best of luck to their head coach with the protein deficiency, the spina bifida, and what other challenge he's got ahead of him. Thinking about him. And Chris, thank you for the calls, man. Appreciate all the time while you've been out there spreading your wings across the nation. I know it's not always easy to work in a conversation from the hotel room or a tunnel or wherever we can get you. So I appreciate you being adaptable, and appreciate the time as always.
Yeah, and along those lines, I appreciate you putting up with me and just all the craziness, because nobody really knows. You do, but nobody really knows all the it's been
it's
a lot.
All fluid.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But I saw, and this never gets old, but this little show of ours is just it's been so much fun for me, and I think you too. But we used to do radio, and I think you there's an audience locally that listens and hears and all that. But this medium, I mean, so many folks in the hotel or at the arena at the Chase Center in San Francisco watch this thing from all parts, and that's what it's here for. And we try to do the best we can. And yeah, I may get fired up, and I may borderline get unprofessional at times when I get frustrated about an opponent or an official or whatever. But we try to keep it real. And I appreciate all of you saying something to me about you watching what Cowan and I do here, because it's just we like doing it, and I think that we were afraid that we weren't sure if anybody would find it or be interested in it, and it's just grown like crazy. And thank you to you all. But I've just enjoyed the run that we've been on, and we'll keep it going. And we've got a big time football season coming up. We've got a lot of portal stuff about to happen with basketball, and we'll try to be here every step of the way with you. And I just wanted to say thank you without trying to be corny, but this was a hell of a season. So many great memories that nobody can take away from you. And I wish there was more to come, but that's sports, man. And that's and like I said, it's supposed to sting a little bit. That's what makes it worth it. So more memes, as the young people say, on the way, on the horizon.
No idea what that means. Don't know if I need to.
Well, it's memories for sure.
Okay. I'm good with memories.
Memes
all alone in the moonlight.
Yeah.
And there will be more to come. We just got a few months to wait,
That's right. That's right.
Roster
but
for it.
Guns up always, man. Right. Yes.
Thanks for being out there. Shout out to the everydayers. Shout out to the Matador Mob. Hit the show notes to find a link to a free 14-day trial if you're interested in joining that outlaw crew. It's your direct line to Chris and myself with one-on-one text sent straight to your phone. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks for the time as always, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.